Hello everyone, welcome to another deck tech for Opus XIII. This time we are using the Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced characters and some of the new cards they got here in Opus XIII. One of them being this legend, which is Shara. Shara is an EX Burst Archer, so when she enters the field you get to choose a card named Ritz in your break zone, add it to your hand, so she basically replaces herself, which is nice. And then the interesting part of her is that when a category FFTA character other than Shara enters your field, you get to place a Viera counter on Shara. And then you can dull Shara, remove one Viera counter, and you get to choose a category FFTA character. It gains, this character cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities until the end of the turn. So she has this really nice protection effect. And she's such a small body too. The one problem is that it's going to be somewhat easy to get rid of her, but if you can get to that point where you've got the counters, she can protect herself, she can protect any of her friends, she can even protect your backup line. So thought we'd build a deck to try to see how much of these counters we could get out of it. I mean, would any FFTA deck be complete without the gold standard, which is Marche and Ritz? Of course not, so of course we're running 3 copies of both of those. Marche is almost always going to have enough FFTA characters to make his cost reduction live, so as long as you control 2 other FFTA characters before he comes in, his cost gets reduced by 2, it means he's just 3, and then when he comes in, you grab any of those FFTA characters of 3 or less, and you just get to play it right to the field. Ritz is, of course, your bread and butter target, but you can technically target the backups as well. You can target Shara, you can target, one of the other forwards we're going to see, but of course you're going to go for Ritz if you're able to. And then Ritz is basically the powerhouse of the deck all on her own, as long as you control another FFTA forward, which is really nice in this deck because in past versions of this, Marche was kind of the only one she had, so if you did kill the Marche, then she would lose her haste in 1,000. But Shara can give it to her. This next card you're going to see can give it to her. So she has 2 other options to get it, which is really nice. Then when she attacks, you get back 3 of your backups. They just reactivate, and that damage 3, she becomes unblockable. So you should know Ritz. She's amazing. So our new FFTA legend, we got 2 of them. But so this one is Lednar. Lednar is a Fire Wind legend. He can be pitched for either CP. So when he enters the field, when you cast him, you get to place the Fortune counter on Lednar. And as long as that Fortune counter is on Lednar, he cannot be broken. And either player can discard 2 cards to remove that Fortune counter from Lednar. So if your opponent wants to break Lednar, they're going to have to discard 2 cards from hand to do it, which can make him a really nice blocker. You can just leave him up. You're more than happy to run him into opponents that would normally trade because you're saying, hey, do you want to pitch 4 CP from hand to be able to break him, which is really nice. I'll be honest, I'm a little underwhelmed by this card. He seems solid, but I don't know. He just hasn't been quite the big beater I was hoping he would be. And unfortunately, the problem is, too, you can't bring him back in with Marche because he won't get his Fortune counter. So, I mean, obviously you can if for some reason it's going to win you the game, but he only gets the Fortune counter if he's cast from hand. Originally, this deck ran Phoenix as well, the 7 CP Phoenix, but again, if you bring him back via Phoenix, he doesn't get his counter, and you really want his counter on him because you want to make sure he can't be broken. That's the whole point of the character. So, what other characters do we have that we can fill this out and get Shara as many Viera counters as we can as possible? 3 copies of this Black Mage from FFTA. For the most part, it's just there for early cheap fire backup, but sometimes you can also tap it, pay 2 fire, put it in the break zone, and then you can get back a fire summon out of your break zone, which is really nice. We have 3 copies of No-No. No-No is a backup I've just kind of loved ever since I started playing the game. And if he's on the field when Ritz is on the field and she attacks, you get to activate 4 of your backups, which is incredibly strong. And there's another card coming up that he has some synergy with. 2 copies of Mont Blanc. Mont Blanc is on an EX Burst. Will let us go fetch out our copy of Marche, which is really nice. And if Marche is on the field, you can tap Mont Blanc, pay a fire, deal something 2,000 damage. Usually that's not too relevant, but it's there if we need it. And finally, we have 2 copies of Donned, or however you say it. So when he hits the field, you can either search for a Marche or a monster and add it to your hand. And then you can also tap him, pay a wind, put him into the break zone, choose any category FFTA card, and put it back to your hand. That would even include summons. Now, we don't run any of the FFTA summons in this deck, but a few of them do exist, such as Exodus. So, in theory, if you were to build a deck with that, Donned can fetch them back too, but it's just nice that he can fetch back any of these characters, forward or back up. And then 2 copies of Unsaganashi. Again, I think kind of the best monster in the game. What's really nice is that I'll often use Donid to go fetch him because I'll have Mont Blanc in hand, or I'll already have the Marche in hand, so then I'll just use Donid to go fetch Saganashi. And you want to keep your Ritz alive. So if you've got Saganashi on the field and you can get your Shard counters built up too, I mean, they're just going to have to spend so much to actually take out any of these people because you've just got so much protection. Okay, so that's all the category Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. I mean, these two are such a package onto themselves. We definitely could use a few more pieces to really fill this out if we wanted to make a deck that was exclusively around Tactics Advance, but this is what we're working with for right now. So we've got to fill it out with some other cards. 3 copies of Terra. Really great for it since it came out in Opus X. Apologies in advance. I don't actually own a lot of these cards here with me right now, so I've had to use a lot of proxies for a lot of these, but I will have the deck list in the description so you can see everything there. But so 3 copies of Terra. Terra's another EX burst. Is going to get us back a summon from the break zone when she enters, and then if we cast any of those summons, you can ping a forward for 2k, which sometimes I've used to combo with the Mont Blanc, so that's just an idea. 3 copies of Amaterasu, probably our most important summon. Really good protection, stops our opponent from casting Shantoto, because we can get a pretty wide board, or if they've got some kind of, big forward, Fina, Philia, whatever, and they're going to try to just do anything. Canceling auto ability is never bad. 3 copies of Balasa on an EX burst. This one, I legit put in here in response to playing this deck against an opponent who ran Sid Randell. Sid Randell shuts off all entry effects from your forwards, and this deck is almost entirely entry effects. As a matter of fact, if you look at all of these characters have entry effects. There's only really one character in here who doesn't have an entry effect where it's relevant. Because that card messed up this deck so much, I was like, you know what, I really need more summon removal. What I like about Balasa is that it's really easy to get to 5 backups in this deck, and because they're going to be different colors, he doesn't care what color they are, he just counts the number of backups total, so you're almost always going to be hitting this for 10k, plus, off of Ritz reactivation, Nona reactivation, you're going to have spare CP. That's kind of the fun thing about this deck, is that you can kind of pay stuff maybe you think would normally be a little pricey, because you're going to get the CP out of it. And our final summon, 2 copies of Diabolos, still one of the most versatile summons in the game. They got a big forward, break it out right. They've got something that's really, they think they're going to swing in with a big 4 cost or something to lower its power, and then boom. And again, really easy to cast after you attack with Ritz. You get 3 or 4 of your backups back, Diabolos them, knock them out of the way. 1 copy of Zandi. He's cheap fire CP to see early, and he's really great in removal if they put down early aggression. Plus, you really don't mind taking the point of damage with him because you really want to go to 3, so that way your Ritz can never be blocked. But he's there. Really, really fun card is 2 copies of Cholinka. So when she enters the field, you choose a forward until the end of the turn. It gains Brave, and it can attack twice. And there's 2 forwards we really want to use that for. Ritz is obviously the ideal target. You'll see another one coming up soon. But it's not a bad Lednar either, because because to me that's what Lednar is missing, is that he's not brave. And when you're not brave and you have this you can't be broken, if he turns sideways and he's dull, well, your opponent doesn't care. They can't break him. They'll just run over the top of him. Although Diabolos is a great way to have a surprise Lednar. So with Cholinka, you can give him Brave. Now he can run into them twice. But being able to attack twice with Ritz, especially if she's unblockable, is really, really fun, and we can bounce Cholinka back to our hand to replay her, to do it all over again, which again is very easy with the CP we're going to be getting. And to kind of go with that theme as well, a copy of Althea. Backup is just silly. You can use it to bounce any character and Althea back to your hand. It's just a great way to constantly replay stuff, get back more summons over and over again with Terra. Have Marche re-enter. It's great protection, too, on your opponent's turn. They're going to come in and say, okay, well, I'm going to nuke your Ritz with a Bahamut or whatever. It's like, yep, that's nice. Just protect it, bounce it back to my hand. She's great. 2 copies of Chocolate. The reason I specifically put her in here is because there were a couple times I felt like, man, I sometimes I almost have too much CP on the backup line. I have nothing to spend it on. Chocolate is a really good way to just start building up item counters. And so that way you can just start drawing cards if you really need to. Really great with Nono as well. You can attack with Nono, Chocolate, tap, untap. It's really fun. So, 2 copies of Zidane. Still one of the best win forwards the game has. You know it's better than having to deal with a big forward when it comes down, making sure it never comes down in the first place. Or if they've got, you know, Shantoto in hand or whatever the most problem card is, you look at it and you say, yep, that's going into the dumpster. So great card, great way to help protect your characters from something bad coming. 2 copies of Y'shtola, another generically good win card. Will cancel any bad auto abilities or summons. There's so much protection in this deck between Lunsaga, Marche, Amaterasu, Y'shtola. Because again, you really want to keep Ritz alive, and you want to keep this next card alive, which is 2 copies of Braska's Final Aeon. You could easily upgrade this to 3 if you want. You could cut one of these upcoming cards I'm going to show you, but Braska's is a beast. He's very easy to play in this deck because you're going to have all this extra backup. It's really easy, you know, swing in with Ritz, get 3 back. You now still have all 5 of your backups after you've spent, you know, for the Marche Ritz. Main phase 2, drop the Braskas onto the field. Braskas is our other target for Chelinka, which I've used a lot. Giving Braskas Brave and he can attack twice, and you have his trigger just blow up, you know, 2 things on the field is very, very nice. So yeah, I actually only own this 1 physical copy. I had to proxy for this other one, but you could very easily bump him up to 3 because he's our heart of the deck. You could take out one of these 2. I've got 1 copy of Philia, 1 copy of Ranjit. Ranjit's just a nice, cheap way to have removal on a body, which I like. And then Philia is in case you're going against aggro or you get behind and you need that big board clear. It's a way to just drop it down, boom, 10k to the board. And last but certainly not least, the Opus XII team would not be complete without 1 copy of Kadaj. He's a burst. He can give Braska's Brave, these 2 Brave, dull, troublesome forwards out of the way, help dump their breaks on, which is really good. If you were around in Opus XI, you know what these 4, Braska's, Marche, Ritz, and Kadaj did. They're pretty brutal. So yes, absolutely feel free to upgrade to a 3rd Braska's. He's a good choice. Other than that, I probably wouldn't run the other Y'shtola because there's just no real way to get Earth in here. So I certainly like that one better. But yeah, that is our Tactics version. Like I said, hopefully in the future they'll put a bit more in it so that we can focus even more heavy on the tactics part, because there's really only, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 8 characters we can use for it. Still, it's really fun. It's satisfying, especially, like I said, you can get so much protection for this Ritz and for this Braskas, and your opponent they just don't know what to do. So, feels really good. Give it a look. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. Bye!